Everyone, welcome to another Founder Wisdom Podcast, VC edition. Today we have Anurag Agarwal with us. He is Managing Director at Oman Technology Fund, and we're going to have a very cool conversation today. Hello, Anu. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about yourself and about Oman Technology Fund.
Hello, Charles. Excited to be on this podcast. I'm based in Muscat, belonging to VC Fund, Oman Technology Fund. To tell you history about OTF, we started back in 2016, late 2016. It was an initiative by the Sovereign Wealth Fund of Oman, wherein they started OTF as actually a fund of funds. And we invested into a few international fund managers in the likes of Kleiner Perkins. We also invested in 500 startups, and their global fund also into their local MENA fund. And we invested in another Iris fund, Atlantic Bridge. I think that's after that, when it came to about selecting the local fund managers, that's when the thinking at the top changed. And then they created teams under OTF itself and to make direct investments. So that's when OTF and the three funds under OTF were established, which is OTF Tekween, OTF Wadi. Wadi means the valley, which is in Arabic word, it's a Wadi, and OTF Jasur. OTF Jasur means the bridging. Jasur is an Arabic word again, means the bridge. And OTF Jasur Venture. So Tekween is a pre-seed fund investing $50,000, but going through an extensive 3 months program. The startups you can come to with an idea, no startup, you can come build your MVP. The seed stage funds basically with the product and market fit, looking to accelerate. So they can come and get about $100,000 to $500,000 investments. And then comes the OTF Jasur, which I'm part of. This is a post seed stage fund investing into pre-series A, series A, up to series B into follow on. So it's a $30 million fund, and we invest across MENA and opportunistically also outside MENA as well.
Interesting. Tell us a bit more about Oman, because I've heard much about Qatar and obviously United Arab Emirates. I think Oman is a bit more quiet on the international scene, and that fund, like I told you last time, my guess, and I think it's an educated guess, is that it's petroleum money kind of reinvested in tech, as petroleum, as we know, is kind of going away. For example, here in Quebec, Canada, all new cars sold will need to be electric by 2030. So tell us a bit more about Oman and the initiatives to reinvest in startups and tech.
Yeah, so in the Middle East, if you see, I think the early starters were like Jordan and UAE, which were at the forefront of this technology and adoption of technology. And so also you see a lot of startups coming from there. Jordan, we call like the kitchen of technology. There are a lot of technical talent come out of it. But UAE has been the commercial market, the big hub, being the also kind of a center of so many business activities around the world now. So it has grown into stature. And then recently, Egypt and Saudi have come up in a big way, purely because of their numbers. Saudi is a big country, Egypt also with 200 million population. So obviously it makes sense. So these are the bigger markets, if you ask us. And Oman, because of the size country, it's a very small country, and not in terms of size, but population, I think still only 4 million plus population. So it has been under the radar, but as you would see now that slowly it is picking up. So I would say that Oman is now where UAE and Saudi were, let's say 4 or 5 years back, which is where like a lot of people taking interest into startups, a lot of young entrepreneurs who at least come from technology or tech background or entrepreneurship or commercial backgrounds are starting to willing to start startups, trying at least giving it a go. And even so, the government also want to have the exposure in this field. As you said correctly, primarily to have a little bit of diversification away from oil, so have this investment and exposure into this field, and plus also to feed into this young ecosystem coming up, the young entrepreneurs who are coming up, and to help them with funding. Because initially, as you would understand, this early stage companies, early stage founders, government or some sort of government initiatives need to push them and fund them. And that's when they become bigger, and when they become a little bit more successful, which we have seen in few startups. I'll tell you the names and talk about them. they can go and get funding from outside. Also, the major milestone for startup or company in our part of the world would be when can they grow and expand outside Oman, because Oman is a small market to cater to. So you can start and build something here, but then to obviously to become relevant and sizable, you need to go and expand outside. So there are now few examples, instances where the companies have demonstrated that, and they've also raised from outside Oman. So, but I would say that OTF has played a big role, pivotal role to kickstart this evolution, if you can say, the startup evolution in Oman.
How can Oman be competitive on the international scene? And let me start with two questions off of that one. Are most startup in Oman serving mainly the Middle East market, or do they also go international? And two, are they, for example, I would see, for example, a SaaS for energy management coming from Oman, just like that. So, am I right in saying that? And how can they kind of compete internationally?
See, what right now, as I said, so Oman is a very nascent, a very young ecosystem. So what we are trying to also help the founders and the companies here to at least be able to first compete and expand regionally, which is grow outside of Oman, go to UAE, Saudi, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, these countries first, and have that capability. And once they are, I think we see that once they're able to achieve that, then we would advise them or motivate them to aspire for growing into outside MENA, which is international expansion. So right now, what we've seen is the top 2 3 successful startups have done that regionally, and now I think next frontier would be that how can they grow internationally. So there are like two recent examples where these were Omani startups were acquired by outside players. One was Karzati. It's a marketplace for cars where you can buy used cars and also refurbished by them, verified on the platform. It was acquired by one Mexican company. I think it's not in the news. I cannot announce the name, but it was acquired by a Mexican company. So that's like pure play Mexican company wanting to come to Middle East, acquiring a Omani player to have a regional footprint in Middle East. And then another company into food delivery app out of Oman, Akeed, 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 that got acquired by another Qatari startup called Snunu. So, if you follow the news, Talabat is like the biggest food delivery player in the region. So the other players who are coming here and trying to compete with or gaining market share here in this region are trying to acquire these smaller companies into countries where they are dominant and successful. So that's where Akeed was acquired by them. Although these are not big exits, but still very good enough and relevant for Oman ecosystem because this is a success. And I think what we understand, believe that this will lead to other founders believing that we can build something, grow, and then get good exits.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How is it for you? For example, coming up in India, you had experience in Kuwait, so that was a long time ago. How was it for you to introduce that country culturally, and what? I mean, that's a broad question, but business-wise, what's the difference between this market, aka Oman, and Indian market, for example?
So when I was in India, I was in JP Morgan. I was in investment banking, which is a very lucrative job. But then I think what made me feel that it's like I wanted to be on the buy side taking decisions, like we want to invest in this or not. So at that point, I was looking into something to break into private equity or venture capital. That's when luckily I got into touch with this guy who was starting the venture capital fund in Kuwait, and we started talking and we liked each other. So I thought like that might be a good move to go. Culturally, if you ask me, see, Middle East not very far off from India because the food wise and living conditions, and there are a lot of immigrant Indians in these countries, so it's not very difficult. And the language also, I think mostly English is spoken language in professional field, professional line of work, so it's not a issue there. So, but only thing, if you ask me, people have to adjust is to heat. It's very hot out here in summers, and Kuwait, I think sometimes it crosses 50 degrees centigrade as well Celsius, so it becomes very tough. But then, yeah, so not very difficult, and plus you get like a lot of Indian people you get to make friends with, and even the people here locally. And when, especially when I came from Kuwait to Oman, I think Omanis are a lovely bunch of people. They're very humble, very helpful, very supportive. So I've always felt like being at home. My parents, my family often come here and visit me, so I don't feel like I'm very far off from my home or in India. Work-wise, I think in if you look at Indian ecosystem, when I left it, it was at a different shape, and now it is at a different. I left India in 2014 when Indian ecosystem was also not that big. At that time, US and China were at the forefront in startups and technology and producing unicorns day after. But now, if you look at India, is a massive, massive market. There are so many unicorns have come out of it, so it's at a different scale. And like we were recently speaking to an edtech startup in India. They said we have 2 million users. We have still not started monetizing it. We are doing a beta testing. And 2 million users would be like a full-fledged market for a Middle East edtech startup. Okay, if any startup can achieve that, it's like already $100 million business here in Middle East. So that's where the difference comes in. But obviously, I'm connected to Indian ecosystem. I talk to a lot of VC friends. I personally angel invest in India. From our fund, we don't have the mandate to invest in India, but I do angel invest just to make some money also and to be close to the ecosystem, follow the news. Like unless you put your money, you won't be too much into touch with that ecosystem. So yeah,
100%.
that's where it is. And now I think we are starting to see like some sort of collaboration. We are trying to help one of our companies. Actually, that happens to be from Oman and trying to expand to India. Let's see if we can be successful, but we're seeing starting to see if there be some synergies.
Interesting. Is it my lack of knowledge slash me putting my energy in searching for Chinese startups? Because I haven't seen impressive. I mean, like apart from Tencent and AliExpress and these humongous startups, I'm not sure if you've studied the China startup ecosystem, but in my opinion, I've seen like way more um, unicorns and interesting startups emerge out of India. And I believe that India is, the future. Eventually, India will be the largest unicorn producer in like, let's say, 10 to 20 to 30 years. What is your opinion on that? Do you also see, do you see China as taking over and as a threat like most people do? Because I don't see that. And do you see India eventually taking over that?
See, politically is a different thing, but if you talk about technology and startups, I think China has always been slightly ahead, and we don't see that as a threat. I think because of the massive consumer market, like massive domestic population that China and India has, we don't need to export or sell anything outside. Not China, not India. If you can do, I think it's a good thing, but if you can sell it and cater to your own market, like even 10% of it, it's a massive, massive market. Uh, I think why recently you're starting to hear about India getting more foreign interest and foreign funding is because of the regulation changes in China. They've cracked down on their own this tech founders, and like if you read about it, the ed tech companies went through a lot of problems. In China mandated that they cannot be profit making. So suddenly all of the money which was supposed to go into ed tech in China now has to be deployed somewhere else in any another emerging market. And I think the most go-to market after China would be India for most people, most foreign funds. So that has happened, and since, as you understand, like China has already become a slightly more mature market, and India is growing to becoming that. So recent, you will hear more of India in next 4 to 5 years than China, and not because India has overtaken China or India is a threat to China, but just because India would be growing. And I think both ecosystem, China and India, can coexist together and become big and relevant for the world.
100%. Yeah, I'm not sure if the word threat was right here. It's just that, if there's a startup in China, well, they're regulated and most of the time even controlled partly by the government with their own ideologies. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
like I've been to China, I've lived there. It's an amazing country. Just that, yeah, from an ideology perspective, I think they're a bit aback, and that's not helping them also on on an
Yeah.
economic level. Kidnapping Jack Ma is not going to help anyone. The politics apart, do you have signs of a startup, like a startup founder, when he's in front of you or she's in front of you? You have like early telltale sign that they're going to be a good investment even before doing your due diligence?
I always like, if you go to my Twitter profile and the bio I've written, that investment is all about gut feeling. So we, it doesn't mean that we don't go through the process. We do a very detailed process of going through our due diligence, looking at all the information, the financial, the forecast, the projections, and looking at the legal paperwork. Sometimes we also conduct technology DD when it's involves deep tech. But mostly what you can say that 90% of the time when you meet a founder, and for the first in the first meeting itself, you can say like, this is the guy I want to invest in, this is the guy I want to back. And most of the time that happens the case. Like when you meet in the first meeting and you feel like this is one company I can go ahead, and most of the time you end up investing in that. And there's never been like in first meeting you don't like someone and then you can start liking it. Seldom happens that. So I think one is the connection that you build. It's very personal. Second, I think it's the quality of the founders as well. Um, Mostly with the things that they talk. I think there's not much to show in terms of product or relevant traction or revenues at their stage, that stage that we invest in. Maybe little. But what separates good founders from bad founders is the vision. And are they doing the right things? Are they taking the shortcuts, or are they going through the detailed process? Are they greedy about valuations, or they are like fair about valuations and they're not too much bothered about valuation, but they want to create value? How do they treat their employees? If there is a proper ESOP plan, these things tell you like, okay, this guy is a good founder, and he's not just here to make $100 million exit and get away from it, but he's trying to build a business which can be exitable in the future. And I often say, but this might sound a cliche, but then we often say, like, we as a firm, that we invest in people, we don't invest in companies. And I think even though it's a cliche, it is very relevant in at least the tech startup ecosystem.
Do you see that as the future of investing? We've seen various platforms that invest in humans instead of companies, so there are shares of humans being sold. So I'm an ambitious founder. You want to invest in me personally, whatever startup idea I start. Is that the future of investing?
It's a very far-fetched thought right now. It's not so easy to tell, but then this is something that actually among friends, among our VC friends, when we sit over coffee and drinks, we've discussed that. How about we come up with an idea where, let's say you're young, when you're young, and this is like could be an idea as well. When you're young, and but most people don't have the means to go through the expenses of education and maybe higher education. So how about you pick up such people and invest in them, and in return, whenever they start earning in terms of salary or in terms of businesses, you get some equity out of it. So a lot needs to be thought about this, how it can be done. But I think yes, we can be moving there. And when and how soon, it's difficult to tell. But yeah, it's not very difficult to. It's not very like you would not say that far-fetched to say that this might be the future.
Yeah,
People
it's
would
just
start.
the
Um,
contractual part of it, right? That because there's a reason why companies are separate than individuals. That it can become slavery pretty quickly if you lock a human being in a contract and you own
exactly.
that human being. So, but yeah, there's already apps, and I guess they can opt out of the contract pretty quickly. So it needs to be win-win. And sorry for interrupting you. We just had like a couple minutes left, so I wanted to ask a couple more questions.
Yeah.
I went to Morocco, and it was the first time that I experienced, the Arab world and the Arab culture, which is very cool. But also, for example, my wife and my assistant, they weren't really at ease there. The women's are being treated not as equals there. Do you get into problems in Oman because of that? I mean, female founders must be very, very minor in that place. Do you face problems regarding that?
No, we don't, and I think Oman is a very fair ecosystem. So there is no, we don't see then any sort of inequality or injustice to the women founders, and we do have a very fair representation of women founders in our portfolio. I think around 20 to 30% of the startups are being led by either they are only women-led found companies, or the CEOs are there being led by women founders. So there is a fair representation. And in terms of inequality, we've never seen that in at least Dubai, Oman, these part of the world, because
Okay.
dressing culture might be different, but that does not mean that women are being oppressed or anything of that sort. So we have always felt comfortable. Like there are we in our offices, in our day-to-day life, we come across so many women founders. We discuss, talk, and go. It's like a normal business. There's nothing different when you deal with a women versus a women founder.
Okay, interesting. I want to finish off like by leaving it kind of broad. I mean, you speak to a bunch of companies. You're in touch with the trends, the world trends. Just like I arrived here in Quebec 3 weeks ago, and I'm seeing many trends. Right, for example, they don't talk much about COVID anymore. And last time I was there was all over the news all the time. There's a lack of labor here in Quebec. I see a bunch of these trends, and as a result, I can start with I can come up with startup ideas. What trends do you see in the world, and what would be a very good startup idea to start either in Oman or any place in the world?
To specifically pinpoint a specific idea might be difficult, but then what we are seeing after the COVID and like how the people have evolved is, I think EdTech is one big space where people have realized that, yeah, so much can happen remotely. Plus, also the way the teachers in the schools have been teaching our kids can change, could be more practical, could be more hands-on and practical experience. Health also, like health traditionally have been going in one certain way, that you go to see a doctor, then they prescribe you, and if there is ailment where you need to be treated in a hospital, you get admitted. But this is changing now. Like we seem, I sit on the board of one as an observer, one of the very successful startups here in Abu Dhabi, which is a platform for chronic health diseases. Now these guys don't need to go to a doctor just for prescription, but on the platform now they can go and subscribe for a prescription and get medicines delivered to their home. So now this saved them like so much hassle and time and energy. So this is how health is changing. Similarly, I think edtech, health, and I think fintech, already we are seeing so many advances. The way in this space, I think India is like the world leader. I was in India recently and I saw like actually literally you don't need to carry a wallet now outside. You can just go out with your phone. 90% of the people around you at the mom and pop stores will accept payment through a mobile phone. I think that's where I think globally also that needs to happen. This is where I think Middle East has a lot to catch up to, and the regulations part of it come into picture. So they need to develop systems, but digital payments become a day-to-day reality.
Last but not least, I want to talk about Mohammed Ben Salman's project. What's it called again? The city, the smart city that he's building.
Yes,
How's it
um,
called? Do you remember? Nema or something like that?
I can't remember the name. Yes, it's
That city is just incredible, and apart from the
line. I think the line.
okay, well, yeah, it's just crazy. It's like 2 kilometers wide and like 10 kilometers glass long, and I was like, oh my god, this is so beautiful. So apart from the politics side of Saudi Arabia, I think like on a innovation front, they're really at the forefront. We can also cite Dubai 2020. Not sure if that one happened, or Dubai 2030, or was
No,
it
Expo
Saudi?
Dubai Expo
Yeah,
2020
yeah, yeah.
happened.
and
It
and
happened in
Saudi
21.
as well, like organized something. So it seems that these countries are really at the forefront if you compare them to others. Am I right in saying that? And what do you see in the future of Middle East regarding tech?
I think Dubai has always been at the forefront because of its advantages, as in a lot of people want to come and live and work in Dubai. But now Saudi is coming up big time. Anyone I speak to, 1 and 3%, every third person is moving to Saudi because there are a lot of VC funds coming up, a lot of startups which has come up. And if you just read the local reports, like there is on the ecosystem, I think now Saudi is representing like as many number of startups as UAE in terms of funding. Maybe the amount of funding still a little bit higher in terms of check sizes in UAE, in terms of deal sizes and number of deals that are happening, and Saudi is becoming almost equal to UAE. So Saudi is pushing a lot on this in this space to promote and have a lot of startups come up in the country, and also encouraging others like companies outside Saudi to come and set base in Saudi, and they're giving a lot of incentives in terms of legal, economical, and commercial benefits, and also making visas and labor laws, all of these making it easier for companies to go and set up there. And also culturally, also Saudi is embracing a lot and trying to become a little bit more friendly for foreigners, for immigrants to come and live there too, so that they want to go there and be there. So Saudi is
Interesting.
coming up a big time. We are all
Yeah,
excited about Saudi.
yeah, it's very cool. And the city is Neom. I found the name. So,
Yeah,
I mean,
Neom.
I mean, it's been a very good interview. Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Was
Charles.
impressive insights that you dropped here. So, just tell us where can people find you online?
I'm available on LinkedIn under my name, and if people type Oman Technology Fund, they'll find me. Plus, I'm also available on Twitter, Anurag_VC. That's my Twitter handle, so they can find me there.
I'll follow you on Twitter so you can read some of my controversial tweets.
Definitely.
All right, man. Have a good day.
Thank you, Charles. Have a good day.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.